Thank you, Mr. President, and to those who are joining us tonight. I just wanted to give you an update to where we were in our progress with Tennessee State's land grant funding arrearage. As you all know, I was chairing the committee that was studying the arrearage of TSU's land grant funding. And for those who know how long this journey has been, you're also aware of the fact that when I first got elected, I did have those conversations with Dr. Glover and Dr. Cynthia Brooks about TSU's funding. We then discovered, of course, that there was not a complete state match coming for our land grant federal funding. And then, of course, when we were able to get that match after a couple of years of work, the question then became, how much has TSU been owed over many years? That began almost in a 7-year process where research had to be done and questions had to be asked. I'm so very pleased to know that, of course, the committee was formed and I was given a chance to chair the committee to do more research on that. So let me again acknowledge the fact that in 1970, Representative Alvin King and my father led a great work to initially discover what Tennessee State was owed, and that work should not be looked over. That is the cornerstone of why we are here now, where we are today. As you also know, at that time, after our committee did their work, we discovered that there was at least $544 million in arrearage that Tennessee State was lacking. Of course, our charge was to then say to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, Tennessee State University, and the Commissioner of Finance and Administration for them to meet and to discuss the inequities and some issues on TSU's campus, report back to our committee what they have discovered, and then we would go from there when we had conversation about funding. For those who may not know, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission was able to produce a report from last year that JLL had compiled after Tennessee State University's grid went out. And in the report, they discovered that $337 million of infrastructure needs were on the campus. This was from decades of deferred maintenance. I want to be very clear about what that 337 million looks like. So many folks have asked, is that the most that the state will allocate toward Tennessee State's arrearage? I want to say to you tonight that that just represents the physical amount of damage that Tennessee State has had to endure because of the underfunding. So when we talk about academic programs and scholarships and other things, that's a whole separate amount. But we do know that definitely $337 million worth of deferred maintenance was not taken care of. Now, what is the process for getting money into the budget? You may not know the process. If you do, then I'm just repeating myself and saying something you already know. But for those who don't know, we will have to convene in our session in January. Money will have to be requested in the state budget. And then that budget will have to be voted upon to get to the place where Tennessee State can start to have some dollars put toward the amount that is owed. It is usually not the case that we would have money allocated out of a special session. We're doing something like that for Ford, but we're not in that process now for Tennessee State University. So just want to give you that brief update. Don't want to take up too much of the time in my presentation, but wanted to allow an opportunity for questions to be asked. I certainly want to acknowledge the fact that there was a huge amount of work put forth by a lot of people. A lot of people were engaged in the process. Many people have asked the question about, does Tennessee State have a lobbyist? Of course, we have a government relations director, Ms. Leah Dupree Love, who is also a TSU graduate and has been doing work behind the scenes to ensure that Tennessee State does receive adequate funding. And of course, Dr. Glover and her administration have done a great job in also eloquently letting the legislature know what is owed to Tennessee State. So I'll now throw it back to you, Mr. President, and we'll open up the floor for questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Representative Love. This is just a wonderful opportunity for us to discuss this. We get so many questions as we're passing, as we run into alum. Actually, again, as I stated earlier, in the HBCU community, we are now somewhat of a template. There are a lot of people looking to us for guidance because this is an issue that just doesn't affect Tennessee State University. It's an issue that affects many institutions that look just like Tennessee State University. And so we want to definitely do our part in providing the guidance. I think one of the things that I salute and celebrate you for is your temperament. You have taught me about patience. You have taught me about learning is action. I think that a lot of times people overstep the fact that when we learn, when we educate ourselves, that's an action step. We're always looking for what are we going to do? What are we going to do next? Before sometimes we take in that opportunity to learn. So I appreciate you for being a teacher to our alumni body. I appreciate you for guiding us and encouraging us to do this the proper way. There may be a day that someone may have to fight, but we're not in those fighting days yet. And we're ready to fight, of course, with our intelligence and fight with putting people in the right place in the right position. And so I'm grateful that you are one of those people in the right place and right position.
Thank you for that. And if I can say, fighting takes on different forms.
Absolutely.
To be able to do what my father and Alvin King did in 1970, to then challenge the administration and say Tennessee State has been underfunded, was fighting. To be able to pick up that work in 2013 after I was elected, and to go on the House floor and filibuster the budget to make sure that Tennessee State did get its state match for the first time in its history, the full state match, was fighting. And again, to be able to work with Dr. Glover and Dean Reddy and Vice President for Finance Administration to try to look at what Tennessee State had been owed these many years. Was fight. But I hear your point. You have to fight in different forms many times.
Absolutely.
Well, great. I want to jump in here. So, hi, everybody. My name is Kendric Dartis. I'm the National Program Chair. I was on mute earlier, but when we're here, we're going to proceed forward. And we're going to open the floor for a discussion with our stakeholders and the alumni body. So we have our first question. We'll feel free, if you're on YouTube or on Facebook, put your questions in the comment section and we will get to them. So the first question that's been posed to the panel is, the housing situation on campus is dire. If TSU is granted the $500 and so off $million, is there a plan of how it will be addressed?
Yes, and that's an excellent question. Let me address something that I know has been put out there several times by some folks. The money that Tennessee State would receive is not just restricted to agriculture. Those dollars, when the state metro was required, were drawn from other sources. They were drawn from dollars that should have gone toward building maintenance. They were drawn from dollars that should have gone to student scholarships. They were drawn from dollars that should have gone to teachers' salary raises. And so when we're talking about the state of Tennessee allocating dollars toward Tennessee State's buildings, those can go toward repairing the residence halls, and those can also look at restoring other issues. So I'm saying yes, that we do need to address the situation with our residence halls. I know that we have 2 new buildings going up on campus, but we do need to make sure that the current buildings are in the best shape that they can be for our students.
It's so unfortunate that we're up against time and, the wear and tear of the years. I know sometimes that we forget about that as well, that, a lot of the conditions of our university, of course, being underfunded for many years. If you can think of your own homes, if you can think of maybe your cars, the different repairs that you need to make, how sometimes you will prioritize those repairs. And it's unfortunate that our university has had to be in a similar position of many families across the country, to have to borrow from one aspect of the pocketbook to pay for another aspect, and while neglecting another portion. So this is definitely something that we need. We need that funding so that we can make those repairs, so that we can get our university to the standards that our students deserve and that our history and legacy deserves.
And let me, if I can, also list out a timeline of when repairs like that could be done. As I spoke earlier about the state budget process, our state fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th of the next year. And so when a bill is passed that has the state budget in it, we normally pass it mid-April, early May. But the checks for those situations of any funding won't be cut until July 1. So one of the issues we'll face with Tennessee State is that in this next budget cycle from January through April of 2022, any dollars will not be released until July, at the earliest, July 1st, 2022, which means that we'll have to have conversations with the State Building Commission in the summertime about improvements that need to be made, getting those things approved, also getting bids in to do those repairs, and looking at the fall semester for those repairs to be done. Again, the upside is that we do have 2 new residence halls being built, hopefully those will be completed in short order, which will allow us to make some repairs to those students' residence halls that are in disrepair. But that doesn't stop us from currently, I think, making some repairs right now.
So some other questions that have came in, we can actually show it here on the screen, is it was mentioned that this had to be voted on in special session. Particularly, are the votes needed there as relates to passing TSU's retribution for that? And then it was found that we were underfunded. What is exactly to be voted on, just for clarity?
So let me be clear about that. I may have been misheard. My statement was that this, unlike the Ford funding for their new facility in West Tennessee, will not be voted on in a special session. This has to go through our regular session. And the question, do we have the votes there? I think we do. We'll see when we get into our regular session, which is in January, if we have the votes to approve the state budget, which should include these funds for Tennessee State University.
Great. Okay. Our other question has come from the Metro Nashville Davidson County property assessor of property. She has asked, is regarding the legislative process, which you kind of just spoke about. You said that money is due to TSU, must be voted on in the budget. Is it subject to be voted on down? Why is that TSU, as relates to saying the possibility that it could be voted down, and particularly, is there ways to split the funds up?
Okay. I think the first question is, why does it have to be voted on, or what is the process? So here's the process for the state budget. November through December timeframe, the governor's office has budget hearings where department heads present their budget requests to the governor. January, when we convene for our work session, the governor will be working on completing his budget presentation. There'll be a presentation to us in the State of the State address. The governor will outline his budget. Then, as we're going through our committee hearings for various other issues, education, insurance and banking, commerce, children's services, criminal justice, there'll be bills that'll be brought forth. And some of those bills also have what we call a fiscal note. It means that they will cost to fund those particular bills. This will allow us to then have conversation about what bills will be passed, what bills won't be passed. Then the governor has an amended budget, which means that there will be things added to the governor's budget or things taken out of the governor's budget. There'll be an opportunity for persons to also submit budget amendments. This will also take place in that time frame. Finance, Ways and Means Committee will vote on these items, and then the budget comes to the House floor. It also comes to the Senate floor for a full vote from all the members. In that situation, the entire budget, which will contain things like Tennessee State's general funding, it'll contain things like Austin P and Tennessee Tech and UT Knoxville's basic campus funding. It'll also include things like Tennessee State's land grant match. It'll include UT's land grant match. It'll include money for other bills that are being proposed. And if the budget passes, and if there is money in there for Tennessee State's arrearage amount, then it passes.
So, as it relates to some other questions, and I think this is a really great educational opportunity for all of us to know about state legislation process. If the Republican-led General Assembly decides that the fund of $500 and so million is not owed, what other recourse can the university do to recoup the funds?
Yeah. All right, and let me make this statement about the General Assembly. It was a Republican-led General Assembly that voted to have this committee. The Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, is a Republican. The Speaker of the Senate, Senator McNally, is a Republican. And so I don't want us to get into that space of talking about Tennessee State's funding under Democratic or Republican leadership, because the truth be told, Democratic governors didn't fund Tennessee State either, if we be honest about it. And so this issue now is one where we need to work with both sides of the aisle to make sure that TSU does receive its adequate funding. Now, the question being asked, if the legislature does not vote to fund Tennessee State University, then we have to find some other measure to recoup those funds. But I would urge and encourage us to be um, patient a little bit more. Everything that I've asked everyone to do, I'm grateful for, and up to this point, I have not been disappointed about the outcome of our efforts. This committee that we have formed in Tennessee is not like any other committee in any other state dealing with land grant issues. Tennessee State is leaps and bounds ahead of other 1890 land grants in talking about our arrearage amount. Some universities still have not received their full land grant match, and so I know there've been conversation about, do we go to court? Should we take a lawsuit out? I would say to us that we need to try the legislative process first, and then if those things don't bring about the positive results, then we can have other conversations about other venues and other options.
Great. And thank you so much, Representative Love. One of the other questions that was posed that I think that a lot of people are kind of wondering is like, what interventions can be put in place to prevent the underfunding from happening again?
Well, the money that is required for our state match was put in the budget in 2015, and going forward, we received our state match. So an intervention that can be put in is simply to have legislators like myself and Senator Gilmore, Representative Vincent Dixie, who all are TSU graduates, to be constantly looking at the budget to make sure that what is in the budget is equal to what our federal allotment is supposed to be. That way we know that going forward that we will get our state match. But it's in the budget now, and it's been in the budget since 2015. So every year since then, we have gotten what we were supposed to get. Now, one of the recommendations that I probably will make going forward is that we need to look again at the percentage of the state match that we're getting. Right now, we are getting 11% of what the state allocates for the match requirement, and UT is getting 89%. That percentage needs to probably be looked at again, because the old formula suggested that the percentage be based upon the population in the state, the population of Caucasian children and the population of African American children. So we need to revisit that percentage, and that's something definitely we do. For example, UT one year was supposed to receive, I think, $15 million, approximately $15 million for their state match, and they actually got 50 million. So they got roughly 35 million more than they were required to get. And so for me, I have concerns about going forward that we make sure that maybe the allotment is more equitable and more fair.
Representative Love, I wanted to bring SGA President Derek Sanders into this conversation eventually. I think that it's important for us to of course, remember the student voice, but as an introduction to introducing the students, what are some of the things that the students can do presently to be a part of this movement or to be a part of supporting labor equity?
Yeah, and I think that's most important, because at the very end of the day, the students are our first priority. It is the living conditions, it's the academic buildings conditions, it is the student scholarship level, it is the quality of teachers that we're concerned about at Tennessee State. And so I think what students can do in a very organized and focused manner, they can start having conversations about what they would like to see improved at Tennessee State University. And these things can range from, they may want to see a endowed chair of excellence in the chemistry department, or they want to see an endowed chair of excellence in the engineering department to attract certain professors that can teach at a certain level. These are conversations they can have about what they would like to see. They can have conversations about what kind of academic programs they want to see at Tennessee State. They may want to see a return of the degree, the minor that dealt with hospitality and restaurant management. They want to see an expansion of that program returning. So they need to have conversations about what things they want to see at the university. That will give us also some roadmap for what funding may be used for.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you so much. I think one of our last questions as we go to wrap this up, particularly for this evening, is one of the questions I think a lot of people are asking is particularly around the time frame. We talked about the timeline of getting the bill passed and moving forward in that way and getting allocated in the budget. But one of the questions been posed tonight was that how many years will it take for the full payment of loss of funding?
So let me go and use an example of the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland legislative body was engaging in negotiations. The lawsuit went on for more than, I think, 15 years. And then they brought legislation that outlined how much money would be paid every year above what the basic campus funding was. I think that for Tennessee State University, one thing we need to think about is what does a repayment schedule look like? Keep in mind, again, the time frame for getting money allocated in the state budget, getting an actual check written to the university, and then getting the work done. I would like to see a situation where Tennessee State University has the time to do the right kind of repairs, has the time to put a good amount of money into student scholarships and to endow those scholarships, time to talk about a long-term endowment plan for infrastructure, time to talk about expanding academic programs. And I'm thinking about a situation where we may mirror what the state of Maryland did, where they have a yearly reporting period about what the funds were spent on. I would think that a 8 to 10 year plan is not too far out of reach. It gives us time to get the funding in. It gives us time to get some results, and it gives us time also to look back and say, okay, what we planned on doing is that still now what needs to be done with expansion of academic programs. We know that repairing buildings definitely needs to be done, but what's it look like for us to have this continuous flow of money coming in over the next 7 to 10 years, and then having a increase in enrollment, an increase in retention, and an increase in attracting professors. I'll tell you something. Taking a tour of the campus and looking at our agricultural buildings, looking at what we saw when we looked at particularly the poultry building that was destroyed in the tornado, and the one they haven't used now. Some of these buildings were built in 1970 and have not been repaired since then. And so these kind of images, for me, speak to the need to increase Tennessee State's infrastructure stability, because you can't attract professors to Tennessee State if you can't take them to buildings where they'll be working in and show them the classrooms they'll be teaching in and show them the labs that they'll be researching in. You can't attract students if you can't take them to residence halls and say, this is where you'll be staying, or show them an academic building where they'll be learning in. So for me, this is a long-term process with recruiting students, recruiting faculty, and also demonstrating to alum that we're making progress in these repairs.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned the word alum. I definitely have to ask, for this phase that we're in, what should alumni be doing in this current phase to support you and to support this effort?
I think alums can continue to be engaged from this process of paying attention to what is being put out in news reports. Alums can continue to pay attention to what is being put out by the Alumni Association. Alums can be very supportive in opportunities when it comes to the legislation in January. For example, if we get money put into the budget in this January cycle, and it's a good amount of money that will go long term toward TSU's repairs, that's an opportunity then for alums at our organizing and coordination with the Alumni Association to then make phone calls to legislators and say, listen, I'm Charles Galbreath, and I graduated from Tennessee State, and I'm very I'm trying to find the right word here. I am very excited about Tennessee State University having money in the state budget to repair some of the problems that we have out there. Thank you for considering voting for this. If you have any questions about how it's affected me when I was in school, I'm able to have these questions answered. That kind of conversation with legislators will let them know that you may have experienced some deficiencies while you were in college, and it maybe had a negative effect on you, but you overcame those things. Alums can be a great voice for Tennessee State with my colleagues by letting them know, hey, listen, this building's in disrepair in 2021, but when I graduated in 2017, I experienced these problems, and now that I know there's a remedy coming, I'm excited about this, and I love to talk to you about my excitement for these remedies.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I want to thank both of you gentlemen, and I'll let Charles proceed out. I think he has some words, particularly around homecoming. So thank you so much, Representative Love. I want to pan over to Charles.
All right. Thank you. And again, thank you, Representative Love. You are just always right on time, right on point with your education. We appreciate all of your hard work. I also want to salute and congratulate you for your upcoming honor, receiving the Presidential Grand Marshal honoree status. So we are getting ready for that great return. So congratulations to you on that.
Thank you so much, and I'm deeply humbled by this honor, and I'm excited about homecoming, and I want alums also know. I know we were trying to close out, but listen, if you have any questions that weren't answered in the show tonight, email me. I'll be happy to respond to questions. I know there are a lot of concerns about a lot of things out there, and I get emails from time to time, but please email me at rep.harold.capital.tn.gov. And you may have questions about what you think can and can't be done. You may have questions, and you may even have doubts and fears that things will go as we want them to. But I'm asking you to also have faith in the process. Think positively about this thing. We've come a long way, and we have some miles to go. We've come a long way. So again, thank you for that honor and that recognition, Charles.
Absolutely. And that's the spirit of homecoming. Homecoming is about returning home and taking care of home. So, when we think about how we can take care of home, how we can take care of our students, how we can take care of the property, there are so many aspects of taking care of home that I just want you to remember during the homecoming season that's coming up. Make sure that you're making those donations. Make sure that you're making that opportunity to connect with students and offer mentorship to these students, because we are definitely looking at students who will one day be alumni. And so we want them to be nourished, and we want them to grow and be ready for the work that we have ahead of them. The beautiful thing that I want to definitely point out again, we honor your father. We do honor the work that he did with his colleagues, the work that they did. And that's, again, the beauty of tradition, how we can move forward and we can pass along information and we can pass along various tasks even. So I'm just very humbled to be a part of this panel with you, Representative Love. Thank you for all of your hard work.
And Charles, don't leave out Mary Love.
Oh, that's it. You're going to get me in my feelings. I absolutely have the greatest admiration, and, to just share with everyone, I attribute my career in social services to Representative Love, Mary Y. Love. She taught me a lot. I was able to be a youth ambassador within the Upward Bound. I was a counselor and had the wonderful opportunity to be under her tutelage. So I know that you're working with some strong power. I know that you have some strong heavenly guides, and I know that you were raised in the right way, because I just got a little bit of what you were offered. So I just am very appreciative for your family and the work that you've done for years for Tennessee State University. All right. So thank you, Kendric. You always do an incredible job as our national program chair and also as our host. We will be joining you again very soon, Kendric and I, to give you some updates on homecoming. We are very happy for this return. We want this to be a safe return, but we want this to be that same Tennessee State University spirit during homecoming. So we're going to put on our mask and we're going to move forward in that great big blue spirit. So thank you for joining us this evening. I want to thank all of the chapter presidents, all of the chapters, the executive board. Thank you, everyone who is involved with TSUNAA and beyond, for all of your hard work, all of your giving, all of your serving. We are all in this to make Tennessee State University the greatest that it can be. And so that land of golden sunshine can extend past John A. Merritt Boulevard. So very humbled to be your president and very proud to be your president. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
you.